Sir, there's a $200 pet fee for your dog, she said, voice sharp as the edge of a rule book. But in that quiet lobby, Alex Walker didn't argue or raise his voice. He just stood steady, his service dog Ranger by his side, calm as the mountain air outside. Because tonight, it wasn't about a fee, it was about respect, about reminding a place that some debts are bigger than numbers on a bill. And when the regional manager stepped in, justice was served and honor was fully restored. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The night air in Colorado had a sharp bite to it, even in early June. Harrison Lodge stood at the edge of town like an old photograph come to life. 2 stories of pale stone and warm lamplight, with the kind of wooden sign that creaks softly in the wind. Inside, Claire Martin leaned on the front desk, her coffee cooling in a paper cup. She'd been on shift for 5 hours, and she had another 7 to go. Most nights passed in a hush, with only the soft hum of vending machines to keep her company. But tonight felt different. She couldn't have said why. Only that something was shifting in the quiet. It was almost 11:30 when the glass doors swung open. Claire looked up and saw him tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in jeans and a faded jacket that had seen 1,000 miles. His hair was close-cropped, his jawline shadowed with a day's growth. A black and tan German shepherd walked at his side, wearing a vest marked service animal. The dog's eyes scanned the lobby with the same watchfulness as his handler. Claire had seen men like him before. Soldiers, mostly. The kind who moved like they were always ready to leave. She straightened up, brushing crumbs from her polo shirt, and forced a polite smile. "Good evening," she said softly. "Can I help you check in?" The man nodded, his voice low and calm. "Reservation for Alex Walker." He said it without hesitation, but there was a tightness around his eyes, like he was already bracing for something. Claire typed in the name, her fingers moving on autopilot. His dog sat perfectly still, alert but patient. Claire could see the edge of a patch on the man's backpack, Navy SEAL insignia, worn almost to white. Alex handed over his ID and credit card, his movements deliberate. Claire caught the flicker of something in his gaze when she met his eyes: exhaustion, maybe, or the wary patience of someone used to being underestimated. As she tapped through the reservation, Claire noticed Ashley Graham step out from the back office. Ashley was new, fresh out of high school, still learning the difference between policy and compassion. Ashley's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Alex. "Sir," she said, her tone clipped, "we have a pet fee of $200 for animals in guest rooms." Alex's jaw tightened, but he didn't raise his voice. "Ranger's a service animal," he said, his voice even. "I have the paperwork." Ashley's lips pursed. "We're supposed to charge, regardless. That's corporate policy." Claire felt her own pulse quicken. She glanced at Alex, saw the faint tremor in his hand as he pulled a folder from his bag. Papers, neatly organized. Proof of training, VA certification. Ashley didn't even look at them. She clicked her pen and shook her head. "I've seen plenty of fake service animal vests," she said. "People print them off the internet all the time." Claire swallowed hard. She wanted to step in, to tell Ashley she was wrong, but her throat felt tight. Her words caught somewhere between her heart and her lips. Alex's expression didn't change. His shoulders stayed straight, his voice steady. "This isn't a pet," he said quietly. "He's trained to help me manage panic attacks." The lobby was too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every breath. Claire could hear the hum of the soda machine, the faint buzz of a dying light bulb in the corner. She could also hear her own heartbeat, heavy in her ears. Ashley crossed her arms. "I don't know what to tell you, sir," she said. "That's the policy. If you don't like it, you're welcome to take it up with corporate in the morning." Alex exhaled slowly, his jaw working for a moment. Then he laid the paperwork on the counter and met her eyes. "I'm not here to argue," he said, "but the law is clear. Service animals aren't subject to pet fees." His tone wasn't defiant, just calm. a kind of calm that felt like it had been forged in places most people never had to see. Claire felt a flush of shame rise in her chest. She'd been trained on ADA guidelines. She knew Ashley was wrong, but she also knew Ashley wouldn't back down. Ranger shifted, leaning closer to Alex's leg. Claire saw the dog's dark eyes flicker up, reading his handler's breathing, the way his fingers twitched. She'd heard that service dogs could sense things before they even surfaced, like they were born knowing how to anchor someone in place. Ashley typed something into the computer, her movements jerky. "I'm adding the charge," she said. "You can sort it out later if you want, but for tonight, it's on the bill." Alex's hand stilled. For a moment, Claire saw the ghost of something in his eyes, a memory. Maybe, or just the weight of the moment pressing down. But when he spoke, his voice was the same. "I'd like to speak to the manager." He said. Ashley didn't move. "She's not here," she said flatly. "You can email a complaint if you really feel strongly about it." Claire shifted her weight, feeling the knot in her stomach tighten. She met Alex's eyes for just a second, and in that second, she saw the flicker of frustration, the quiet fury of a man who'd been forced to fight too many battles. His hands were steady, but she saw the faint tremor at the edges, the way his shoulders rose and fell too fast, like he was trying to slow the panic before it took hold. Ranger pressed his body closer to Alex's leg, silent and unmoving, a quiet strength that needed no words. Claire opened her mouth, ready to say something, anything to break the silence. But then she looked at Ashley's set jaw, the way her fingers drummed against the countertop, and the words died in her throat. Alex didn't argue. He just picked up the papers and tucked them back into the folder. "Fine," he said, his voice still calm. "But I'll be recording this conversation for documentation." Ashley scoffed. "You can't record on private property." Alex's eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "Federal law allows it when civil rights are involved," he said simply. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine. Not fear, just a sudden understanding that this wasn't just about a pet fee. It was about something deeper, something bigger. She watched as Alex pressed the record button on his phone, the red light blinking softly in the dim lobby. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't demand. He just stood there. And in that quiet stand, Claire realized she was witnessing something important, something that would ripple far beyond the walls of Harrison Lodge. Outside, the wind rattled the sign again. Inside, the lobby was still. Claire took a breath and tried to find her voice, because some moments don't come back again, and this was one of them. The red recording light on Alex's phone blinked softly, but everything else in the lobby seemed to hold its breath. Claire could feel the air shift around them, like the silence itself had become a living thing. She wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Alex's voice stayed even, but there was a tension beneath it, like the quiet calm before a storm. "I'm going to need the corporate phone number," he said, his tone deliberate. He didn't raise his voice or plead, just stated it with the kind of steadiness that made the hairs on Claire's arms stand on end. Ashley crossed her arms, her lips twisting in a tight smile. "That's not necessary," she said dismissively. "I already told you this is policy, and I'm following it." Claire shifted her weight, glancing at the man and his dog. Ranger's eyes never wavered, fixed on Alex like he was reading every breath. She could see how Alex's shoulders rose and fell measured, controlled, like he was counting them in his head. In that steady rise and fall, Claire saw more than just frustration. She saw memories, faint but powerful, etched into every line of his face. She didn't know what he'd seen, but she could imagine. She pictured him crouched in the sand somewhere far away, listening for the quiet click of something hidden. She imagined the weight of a rifle in his hands, the way his ears must have learned to hear danger in every breath of wind. Alex drew in another slow breath, like he was pulling the strength up from his boots. "Ma'am," he said, his voice soft but clear. "Federal law says you can't charge fees for service animals. I'm not looking for trouble, I just want this resolved." Ashley's eyes narrowed. She glanced at the dog, then at the other guests who had started to linger at the edge of the lobby. A businessman by the elevator watched from behind his phone, pretending to scroll but clearly listening. An older couple near the coffee station whispered, glancing back and forth. Claire felt her chest tighten. She had worked with Ashley for 3 months, watched her click through late-night invoices and joke with the cleaning crew. But this was different. Ashley turned back to the computer, her fingers moving quick and sharp. "I'm adding the charges now," she said. "200 for the cleaning fee, 50 per night. That's the policy." Alex didn't move. His jaw worked for a moment, like he was biting back the words that wanted to come. Claire saw his hand tighten around the edge of the counter, saw the way Ranger shifted closer, leaning into his leg. The dog's presence was a quiet anchor, a wordless promise. Claire had read once that dogs like that could sense panic before it even reached the mind. She wondered if that's what was happening now, if Ranger was already reading the rising storm in Alex's chest. Ashley's fingers paused on the keyboard. "You can pay now, or you can leave," she said, her tone flat. "But you're not staying here for free." The man by the elevator shifted uncomfortably. Claire caught his eye for just a second, and she saw it there, sympathy, and something else. The kind of silent witness that could make a difference. Alex's breathing grew shallower, but his voice didn't waver. "I'd like the corporate number," he said again. "Please." Ashley's mouth tightened. She didn't answer, just kept typing, ignoring him like he was an inconvenience instead of a guest. Claire swallowed hard, her own pulse racing. She could see it, the flicker of doubt in Ashley's eyes. But she also saw the stubborn set of her shoulders, the way she held her ground like she was protecting something she didn't fully understand. In that moment, Claire realized this wasn't about hotel policy. It wasn't about a $200 fee. It was about something deeper, about respect, about dignity, about refusing to be pushed aside. Alex's hands trembled slightly, the only sign that the calm was costing him something. Claire watched him take another breath, steady and deliberate, like he was pushing the panic down, 1 second at a time. "Ma'am," he said, his tone calm as ever, "I need the corporate number, and if you won't give it to me, I'll find another way to contact them." Ashley let out a short laugh, but there was an edge of uncertainty in it. "Sure," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Go ahead. I'm sure they'll love hearing from you." Claire felt her stomach twist. She wanted to do something, step in, say that Ashley was wrong, but her throat felt like it was closing up. She'd never been good at confrontation, but watching this, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her own silence. Alex didn't flinch. He reached for his phone again, his fingers moving slowly, deliberately. "I'll document this," he said, "for my records." Ashley's eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe, or just the realization that this wasn't going to be as easy as she thought. "You can't record in here," she snapped. "I'll have you removed if you keep causing a scene." Alex didn't react. He just kept the phone steady in his hand, the red light blinking softly. "I'm not causing a scene," he said quietly. "I'm standing up for my rights." The older couple by the coffee station exchanged a look. Claire saw the way the woman's mouth tightened, the way the man's hand hovered over her shoulder. They were watching now, really watching. The businessman by the elevator put his phone down and stepped a little closer, his expression unreadable. Claire realized in that moment that the lobby wasn't just a lobby anymore. It was a stage, and everyone was choosing a side. Ashley's hands hovered over the keyboard, her confidence starting to crack. "I'll call security," she said, her voice a little less steady. "You're disrupting other guests." Claire felt her own breath catch. She knew there was no security on site at night, just the phone number for the local police. But the threat hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Alex didn't back down. He set the phone on the counter, his fingers steady. "Call them if you need to," he said. "I'm not leaving until this is resolved." His voice was calm, but Claire could see the strain in his shoulders. She could see the way Ranger pressed closer, his head tilted just so, his eyes locked on his handler. It was like the dog knew exactly what was happening, like he'd been trained not just to protect, but to bear witness. Ashley's mouth twisted into a thin line. She picked up the phone on the counter, her fingers tapping out the number for corporate. Claire watched her hands shake, just slightly, as she lifted the receiver. "Fine," she muttered, her voice clipped. "But don't think this will change anything." Alex didn't answer. He just stood there, breathing slow and steady, like he was back on some dusty road in a place far from here. Claire could almost see it the way he scanned the room, the way his eyes flicked to every corner like he was checking for exits. It was a different kind of battlefield, but the calm was the same. The line rang once, twice. Ashley's shoulders tensed as she waited, the phone pressed tight against her ear. Claire watched, her hands clenched at her sides, feeling every second like a weight in her chest. When the call connected, Ashley's voice dropped to a softer tone, polite, almost apologetic. "Hello," she said. "This is Ashley at the Harrison Lodge. I have a guest here who's disputing our pet policy." She paused, listening. Her face paled just a shade, her fingers tightening on the phone. Claire couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she could see the shift in Ashley's posture, the way her shoulders hunched just slightly, the way her eyes darted to Alex and then away. Alex didn't move. He just watched her, steady and patient, like he knew the tide was starting to turn. Claire held her breath, her pulse thudding in her ears. She didn't know how this would end. But she knew, in that moment, that Alex Walker wasn't backing down, and she knew she didn't want to stay silent any longer. Claire's hands shook as she tucked her phone beneath the counter, her thumbs flying across the screen. She didn't know if she had the right to step in, but she also knew she couldn't watch this happen in silence. She typed a quick message to her uncle, Henry Martin, explaining everything she'd just seen. Henry was more than family. He was the regional operations manager for Harrison Lodge Properties, a man who believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard. Claire's heart thudded as she hit send, hoping he'd see the message before it was too late. Across the lobby, the older couple by the coffee station exchanged glances. The man, a Vietnam veteran judging by the faded patch on his jacket, pulled out his phone. His fingers moved carefully, dialing a number he knew by heart. "Yeah, it's me," he said softly, his voice low but urgent. "There's a situation here. ADA violation. Looks like. Could use some eyes on it." He didn't say more than that. Didn't have to. Some calls didn't need explanations, just facts and the truth that carried them. Ashley still had the phone to her ear, her voice clipped and defensive. "No, I understand what the policy says," she insisted, her tone a little too loud, a little too brittle. "But he doesn't have the right paperwork. I'm just following procedure." Alex stood like a statue, his phone steady on the counter. Ranger's head was pressed to his thigh, a quiet reassurance in the growing storm. Claire watched the way Alex's eyes stayed locked on Ashley's face, calm but unyielding. A minute later, Ashley's face changed. Her posture stiffened, the hand holding the phone starting to tremble. I see," she said quietly, the fight bleeding out of her voice. "Yes, sir. I'll handle it." She set the receiver down with a faint click that echoed through the room. Her cheeks were pale, her lips tight. Claire saw her hands shake as she turned to Alex. "There's been a mistake," she said, her voice hollow. "Corporate has asked me to remove all charges for the dog." Alex didn't say anything. He just waited, the same quiet calm in his eyes. But Claire could see the relief there too, like a tight band around his chest had finally loosened. Ashley turned back to the computer, her fingers moving with none of the earlier confidence. She typed quickly, deleting the extra charges from the invoice. Each keystroke was a small surrender. The veteran near the coffee station nodded once, slipping his phone back into his jacket. He didn't say a word, just gave Alex a small nod of respect before turning back to his wife. Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a single message from Henry. "I'm on my way, hang tight." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Henry didn't make promises he couldn't keep. If he said he was coming, he would be there. Ashley finished the last adjustment and slid the printed invoice across the counter. Her fingers fumbled as she pushed it forward. All cleared, she said, not meeting Alex's eyes. No charges. Alex picked up the paper, scanned it quickly, and gave a single nod. His shoulders stayed square, his jaw tight. But Claire saw the way his hand eased on Ranger's head, the way he drew a long, quiet breath. The lobby door swung open a few minutes later, and Henry Martin stepped inside. His coat was still dusted with rain, his hair silver at the temples. He didn't waste time with pleasantries, just scanned the room and walked straight to the counter. "Alex Walker," he asked, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Henry Martin, regional manager. I'm here to resolve this personally." Alex turned to him, his expression guarded but respectful. "Thank you," he said quietly. Henry glanced at Ashley, his eyes cool and assessing. "You can take a break," he told her, his voice low. "I'll handle this." Ashley hesitated, then ducked her head and disappeared into the back office. Claire watched her go, a mix of relief and worry in her chest. Henry turned back to Alex. "Mr. Walker," he said, his tone shifting to something more personal. "I want to apologize for what you've been through tonight. This is not who we are." Alex didn't respond right away. He looked at Henry, weighing the words, then gave a small nod. "I appreciate that," he said softly. Henry reached into his jacket and pulled out a fresh set of key cards. "We've upgraded your room to a suite. No charge," he said. "And I'd like to offer to cover any expenses you incurred traveling here for your sister's wedding." Claire saw Alex blink, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. It was more than an apology, it was a gesture that spoke of dignity, of respect finally given. "That's very generous," Alex said. "But it's not about money." Henry nodded. "I understand," he said simply. "It's about making this right. Not just for you, but for every veteran who comes after you." Claire felt a shiver of something in her chest. Pride, maybe, or just relief that someone had finally seen what she had seen. Henry extended the keys, his hand steady. "Your room is ready whenever you are," he said. "And if there's anything else we can do, you let me know personally." Alex took the keys slowly, his hand brushing Henry's in a brief, silent understanding. "Thank you," he said again, his voice low. Henry turned to Claire then, his eyes warm. "Thank you for reaching out," he said quietly. "You did the right thing." Claire swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. She didn't trust her voice not to crack. Outside, the wind had settled, the night quiet again. But inside the lobby, something had shifted. The tension was gone, replaced by a calm that felt like a breath after too long underwater. The veteran near the coffee station caught Alex's eye and gave him a small, solemn salute. Alex returned it with a nod, his expression softening in a way Claire hadn't seen before. Henry glanced at Alex one more time. "We're implementing new training," he said, "company-wide. This won't happen again." Alex's shoulders eased. "Just a fraction." "Good, he said. "That's all I wanted." Henry smiled faintly. "Sometimes it takes one person to remind us of the rules." He said, "Tonight, that person was you." Alex's mouth curved in a small, tired smile. "I didn't want to be the one," he admitted, "but I couldn't let it slide." "I know," Henry said softly, "and that's why it mattered." He turned and walked back to the doors, pausing only to glance at Claire once more. "Take care of him," he said quietly. "He's earned it." Claire watched him leave, the glass doors swinging shut behind him. She felt the weight of everything that had happened pressing against her chest. But there was relief there too, a quiet certainty that, for once, the right thing had been done. Alex lingered at the counter for a moment, his hand resting on Ranger's head. Claire saw the way his eyes softened, the way the tension in his shoulders eased just a little. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice low, "for not looking away." Claire blinked back the sudden sting in her eyes. "You're welcome," she whispered. Alex gave a small nod, then turned and walked slowly toward the elevators. Ranger moved at his side, calm and steady as always. Claire watched them go, her heart pounding in the quiet. She knew this wasn't over. There would be more conversations, more apologies, more things to put right. But tonight, at least, they had taken the first step. And in the silence that followed, Claire knew she had witnessed something she would never forget. The lobby slowly emptied as Alex disappeared behind the elevator doors. Claire stood behind the counter, her hands resting lightly on the polished wood. The weight of everything that had happened settled on her shoulders like a warm, steady blanket. She could still feel the echo of Alex's last words. They weren't about a room upgrade or a complimentary breakfast. They were about dignity, about being seen for the person he was, someone who had carried so much further than most could even imagine. The older couple near the coffee station gathered their things, casting a final glance at the elevator. The veteran gave Claire a small nod, a quiet sign of respect. She nodded back, feeling the silent understanding pass between them. The businessman who had stood by the elevator offered her a faint smile as he stepped into the night. He deserved better, he said softly. I'm glad someone finally saw it. Claire swallowed hard. Me too, she murmured, her voice steady. For the first time that night, the lobby felt calm, no more tension humming through the air, just a stillness that felt like relief. Over the next few days, the story of that night spread quietly through Harrison Lodge, not through corporate memos or loud announcements, but through the small, deliberate gestures that people make when they're learning to do better. Ashley didn't speak of it, but her posture softened. She started listening more, her fingers no longer drumming on the counter when guests spoke. Claire saw the way she met guests' eyes now, the way her smile reached a little deeper. Corporate sent out a company-wide memo 2 days later. New training, new standards, new respect for what service animals meant. Claire read the email twice, letting each word sink in. It wasn't about checking boxes or covering liability. It was about finally understanding. On the third night after everything, Claire noticed a young man checking in late, his Labrador retriever wearing a blue service vest. Ashley met him at the counter, her tone careful and kind. No extra charges, no dismissive looks, just a gentle welcome and a room key offered with a smile. Claire watched from her usual spot, the knot in her chest easing. Change didn't always come with noise or headlines. Sometimes it was in the soft voices, the small corrections, the quiet dignity of just doing the right thing. 6 months later, winter had settled over Colorado. The snow fell softly outside Harrison Lodge, turning the world white and hushed. Claire's shift was nearly over when she found a small envelope tucked into the drawer beneath the counter. Her name was written in block letters, plain and steady. She paused for a moment, fingers tracing the paper, before she carefully opened it. Inside was a note written in clean, deliberate handwriting. Claire, it began. I wanted to thank you for seeing me that night, for not turning away when it would have been easier. She read it twice, her chest tightening. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made her throat ache. You didn't have to say anything. The note continued, but you did what mattered. You didn't look away. I've carried that with me every day since. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words settle in her heart. The letter was signed simply Alex. Claire folded the note carefully and tucked it back into the envelope. She didn't need to frame it or display it. She knew what it meant. She knew what it had cost him to write it. As the months passed, guests kept arriving, some weary from long trips, some with stories written in the lines of their faces. Claire greeted each one with the quiet grace she'd learned from that night. She listened. She watched. She made sure no one felt invisible. One evening in early spring, a young woman stepped into the lobby, her golden retriever pressed close at her side. The dog wore a vest marked PTSD service animal, and his eyes never left his handler's face. Claire felt a faint shiver of recognition. The same quiet bond, the same calm that Ranger had shown. She watched as Ashley greeted the woman, her voice soft and kind, her smile real. No charge for the dog, Ashley said gently. We're just glad you're here. The woman blinked, surprised. Claire saw her shoulders ease, the small smile that curved her lips. Thank you, she said, her voice quiet but sure. Ashley nodded once, handing over the key cards. Of course, she said. If you need anything, just let us know. Claire felt a quiet pride swell in her chest. It wasn't about one night anymore. It was about every night that followed. About every veteran who walked through those doors and knew they were seen, not judged. Outside, the snow had melted into thin streams running along the edge of the parking lot. Claire watched the young woman disappear down the hallway, the dog's head pressed lightly to her leg. She thought of Alex and Ranger, of the calm way he had refused to be pushed aside. She thought of how small acts, one voice, one steady refusal could ripple outwards, changing things in ways no one could ever fully see. Claire took a breath and turned back to the front desk. The lobby was quiet, the soft glow of the overhead lights warm against the polished wood. She reached for the phone and checked the night's arrivals. Names she didn't know yet, stories she hadn't heard, but she knew now that it wasn't about how much you said. It was about what you did in the quiet moments when no one else was watching. The coffee machine hummed softly behind her. The faint smell of fresh bread wafted from the kitchen. Outside, the wind stirred the last of the winter leaves, sending them dancing down the empty street. Claire let herself smile, just a little. She didn't know what the next night would bring, but she knew what mattered. She knew that some debts weren't measured in dollars. They were measured in the quiet moments of recognition, the gentle ways people refused to turn away. And as she stood there, her hands resting lightly on the desk, she realized she wasn't just a witness to that night anymore. She was part of it, a small piece of the quiet strength that had changed more than a single reservation. It had changed how a town would remember what service meant, how kindness, in the smallest moments, could echo further than anyone ever expected, and how one man's calm refusal to be unseen could become the reason others learned to look closer, listen deeper, and remember, always remember. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.